Coming up on Primetime News, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un hails the recent inter-Korean deal, saying it's paved the way for reconciliation and trust between the two sides. Now, despite signs of thawing relations between the two Koreas, Seoul and Washington hold a joint firepower drill to counter any possible threats coming from Pyongyang. Plus, the South Korean government proposes working-level talks with North Korea next month to discuss holding reunions for families separated by the Korean War. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello and welcome to Primetime News on this Friday, August 28th. I'm Hwang Ji-hye.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Thank you for joining us.
The images from the last emotional meeting between families separated by the Korean War are fresh on our minds, and that's why our first story is a welcome development.
Right. Following a landmark agreement between the two Koreas, South Korea has offered to hold working-level talks with the North next month to discuss their planned reunions for war-separated families. Kim Ji-hye starts us off.
The Unification Ministry says the South Korean Red Cross proposed holding a meeting to discuss the reunions on September 7th on the South Korean side of the border village of Panmunjom. They're expected to discuss details, including the date and location of the reunions if they were to take place. The proposal follows a landmark inter-Korean agreement earlier this week that includes holding a set of family reunions in time for Chuseok, or the Korean Thanksgiving holiday that falls at the end of next month. But even if talks go ahead as planned, the Korean Red Cross says the actual reunion may occur in mid-October instead, since sorting out the list of more than 66,000 separated family members presumed to be alive will take some time. Once the location and time are finalized, a committee of 7 will work on the selection process. The committee will devise a list of the selected participants through a draw. The committee, however, plans to shorten the list after considering health conditions and other factors that may inhibit movement. A total of 19 such reunions have taken place since August 2000. The last one was held in February last year. The separated family members who would meet haven't seen each other for nearly 70 years since the Korean War in the early 1950s ripped them apart. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
Just 3 days after the two Koreas reached a landmark agreement, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un spoke about the importance of staying committed to the deal. Our Hwang Sung-hee tells us what Kim's latest comments may mean for inter-Korean relations.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un hailed the new inter-Korean agreement, calling it a landmark occasion that could be a crucial turning point for the Koreas.
The joint press release published at the contact provided a crucial landmark occasion of diffusing the acute military tension and putting the catastrophic inter-Korean relations on the track of reconciliation and trust.
The remark, made at a recent Workers' Party meeting, comes 3 days after the Koreas reached the agreement. It also follows similar comments made by senior North Korean officials Hwang Ji-hye, who said it's a relief that the two sides created a new mood for improving ties, and Kim Jong-un, who stressed the importance of advancing towards reunification. Analysts say the string of publicity about the agreement is significant and expect Pyongyang to take aggressive steps to advance inter-Korean ties in line with its commitment. On Friday, South Korea welcomed the young leader's remarks, but said the North must put its words into action.
We expect North Korea to abide by the accord that it agreed to and urge it to faithfully implement it.
At the same party meeting, the North Korean media reported Kim sacked several top officials of the regime's Central Military Commission. The reasons for the dismissals remain unknown, but analysts said it could be linked to the landmine explosions at the demilitarized zone that led to South Korea's strong response. They said the sacked officials may have been held responsible for allowing the latest confrontation to nearly spin out of control. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
The largest ever South Korea-U.S. firepower exercise took place on Friday. The drill showcased state-of-the-art weaponry from both allies with thousands of people, including South Korean President Park Geun-hye, in attendance. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
South Korea and the United States on Friday conducted their largest integrated firepower exercise to date in Pocheon, Gyeonggi-do province, near the border with North Korea. Over 2,000 South Korean and U.S. troops from 47 units took part in the drill, with hundreds of heavy artillery units and military vehicles also being mobilized to perform war simulations against isolated and all-out aggressions by North Korea. Marking the 70th year anniversary of South Korea's liberation from colonial Japan, this year's exercise was the largest of its kind to be held since it began in 1977. President Park Geun-hye was among the 12,000 attendants who didn't spare cheers and words of encouragement for the soldiers. The drill showed off all aspects of the South's military prowess in terms of firepower, including K-9 self-propelled artillery, F-15K fighter jets, and even 120 state-of-the-art multiple-launch rocket systems, dubbed Cheonmu. Spectators also had a chance to witness U.S. war weaponry, such as Bradley tanks, Cobra, and Apache attack helicopters. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
In the aftermath of Seoul's recent deal to defuse tensions with Pyongyang, President Park's approval rating jumped by the biggest margin this year to a record 49%. According to Gallup Korea, that means some 1,000 South Koreans spoke positively about how the president is running the country, compared to 44% that gave a negative response. The amount of positive responses increased 15 percentage points from the previous week, and it's the first time since last November that positive assessments outnumbered negative ones. Nearly 4 out of 10 people surveyed cited President Park's North Korea and security policies as their reason for supporting her, while 65% of respondents said Seoul did a good job in its negotiations with Pyongyang.
President Park Geun-hye and Chinese President Xi Jinping are being urged to discuss the reunification of the two Koreas when they meet in Beijing next week for summit talks. In an article posted on the Project Syndicate website on Thursday, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Christopher Hill claimed North Korea is on the brink of collapse. He added South Korea and China should discuss the aftermath of the South's potential absorption of the communist state once it becomes unable to function. Hill, the former chief U.S. nuclear negotiator with Pyongyang, labeled Kim Jong-un a leader worse than his father and grandfather. On the reclusive regime's latest military standoff with South Korea, Hill said Kim created a crisis for no apparent reason and gained very little from it. Japan has launched a website with historical records that claim Korea's Tokto Island as Japanese territory. On Friday, Eriko Yamatani, the Japanese minister in charge of territorial affairs, said the site includes around 200 pieces of official documents and newspaper articles on Tokto. But the archive only dates back to the period between 1905 and the 1960s, when Japan forcibly occupied the island. Yamatani claims the site merely provides information to the public and does not speak on behalf of the Japanese government. Japan's flawed claims over Tokto Island remains a major point of contention between Korea and Japan.
Korea's rival parties are involved in another budget standoff. A last-minute dispute over a multi-million-dollar budget item has resulted in the cancellation of a full assembly session originally scheduled for this Friday. Our Park Ji-won has more.
Friday's pre-scheduled full assembly to approve the government's budget settlement for last year and vote on a Supreme Court justice nominee was canceled after rival parties locked horns over a government budget issue. Until this morning, the ruling Saenuri Party had been urging swift passage of bills and motions pending at the assembly.
To successfully conclude the August Assembly session, the approval of Supreme Court Justice nominee Lee Gi-taek, the budget settlement for 2014, as well as passage of economic-related bills should be voted on Friday.
However, the plenary session scheduled at 10 a.m. was called off as the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy said it would boycott the session unless a subcommittee is formed to scrutinize a multi-million-dollar item in the budget called special activities. The NPAD took issue with details remaining classified surrounding the allocation of over $700 million annually for the special activities and called for the expenses to be overhauled to minimize tax waste.
The amount of budget allocated to the National Assembly under the item of special activities is less than $7.6 million. But we need to disclose those expenses, as well as the $700 million allocated to other government agencies in the item.
This classified budget item has emerged as a very contentious issue during the deliberation process at the Assembly's Budget Committee meeting this week. The ruling Saenuri Party says more than half of the funds go to the nation's intelligence agency and should remain classified. But the opposition party says now is the time to overhaul the spending of the secretive budget, as earlier this year, lawmakers from both parties were found to have used funds from the special activities for personal use. After the full assembly was called off, both parties tried to hold negotiations to resolve the standoff and to reschedule the plenary session, but failed to reach an agreement. However, the possibility of scheduling another plenary session for next Monday still remains, as the two rebel parties may continue negotiations over the weekend. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye says in an era of open markets and aging society, Korea should seek opportunities in the rapidly changing agricultural environment. At the opening of a farming exhibition titled the 2015 A Farm Show in Seoul, she said the global food industry has outgrown the IT and auto industries combined, and that advanced nations are investing more into the agricultural sector. Vowing government support, President Park talked about bringing together IT, biotechnology, and food processing technologies to increase productivity and marketability and to attract more young Koreans to the agricultural sector. In order to stimulate the country's agricultural economy, the president suggested merging the sector with areas of food processing, distribution, sales, and tourism to create added value.
The panic may be over in the world's stock markets as China's shares ended on a rising streak continuing from Thursday. Along with a more than expected growth rate in the U.S., there are hopes the world economy will be on a more stabilizing path soon. Kwon So-hwa reports.
What started as a Black Monday in China sent shockwaves in stock markets across the globe, now ended on a much brighter note. China's main Shanghai Composite Index managed a second consecutive rise after falling earlier this week to an 8-year low in a single day and below the 3,000 mark, a level considered as psychologically healthy for the country's economy. Stabilization is attributed to the central bank's rate cut on Tuesday and government intervention in the local bourse Thursday, giving hope the China risk will die down.
The Chinese economy is growing at a reasonable pace. We think that in the second half of the year, achieving an annual economic increase of 7% will not be a problem.
An official of China's central bank said global stocks volatility was sparked by worries over the likeliness of a key interest rate hike in the U.S., adding the U.S. central bank should postpone the race for emerging countries to prepare. But chances of a hike may have increased as the U.S. economy appears to be getting back on track. Its GDP estimate for the second quarter jumped almost 1.5 percentage points to 3.7%. It came as a welcome surprise, too, exceeding earlier predictions by the government and economists. The spike came on the back of an increase in consumer spending, which accounts for more than 2/3 of economic activity in the U.S., and a rise in government spending and exports. A senior Fed official said it's time to talk about normalization. She added there was no need to overreact to the recent volatility stemming from China's market rout. Kwon So-hwa, Arirang News.
In other news, Korean online retailers can now deliver their products to Chinese customers by sea. Previously, the only available option was through flights. The Korean Customs Service said Friday items will be sent to Qingdao, where they will be processed by customs and then taken on by the Chinese Postal Service. Shipping town will take a day longer than by air, but there are advantages. The cost will be slashed by half, plus the process will speed up as customs inspectors will only use X-ray scans. Korea hopes the new option will give a much-needed boost to slowing exports to China.
Korea's top automaker Hyundai Motor Group is losing ground in the lucrative Chinese auto market due to competition from local brands. The Korean firm is not the only automaker suffering either. Shin Se-min reports.
Despite the steep decline in growth in China's local economy, its local automakers are all smiles, enjoying robust sales. Chinese local automakers have put Korea's top auto brand, Hyundai Motor Group, to the test. Looking at the figures, Chinese manufacturer Chang'an Automobile sold 446,000 units, experiencing over 53% growth in the first 7 months of this year compared to last year. The country's largest SUV maker, Great Wall Motors, posted on-year growth of 31%, selling over 390,000 units in the same period. That's a 16% hike on year for Chang'an and 8% for Great Wall Motors in the month of July. In contrast, Korea's Hyundai Motors saw sales drop nearly 11% in the January to July period, while its sister company, Kia Motors, saw sales crimped by over 6% on year. The firms took up a total of 7.5% of China's market share, below the 10% mark it recorded in May. Korean automakers aren't the only companies taking a hit in the Chinese market. Last month, Volkswagen Group saw sales nosedive by nearly 30% on year, and General Motors also shed 24%. Industry officials say it all boils down to cheaper prices. With Chinese automakers turning out more affordable vehicles at less than half the price of its foreign competitors, experts say it's becoming much more difficult to win over local drivers as many look for ways to cut spending in the slowing economy. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
In the world of sports, 23-year-old Korean soccer player Heung-min said goodbye to Germany-based Bayer Leverkusen to play for Tottenham Hotspur through 2020. Tottenham's website disclosed Heung's deal Friday, making him the 13th Korean player to play in the world-renowned English Premier League, or the EPL. Tottenham's reportedly paid $34 million for Heung's transfer deal, the largest it has ever paid for an Asian player. Heung's to face other Korean players this season, including Ki Seung-yong of Swansea City and Lee Chung-yong of Crystal Palace.
For the top international headlines, we now turn to our Lee Sun-ho at the News Center.
Today's focus: a migrant crisis grows in Austria and Libya. A former Vatican archbishop accused of sexual misconduct dies, and Facebook hits 1 billion users in one day.
But first, Sun-ho, could you give us updates on the dead migrants found in an abandoned truck in Austria?
Sure, the death toll was raised from the initial 50 announced yesterday to now more than 70. Hungarian police have also arrested 3 people involved in the human trafficking incident, including the truck driver. Our Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
It was a shockingly grim discovery for the Austrian police on Thursday when they opened the back door of an abandoned truck sitting on a highway that links the Hungarian capital of Budapest to Austria's Vienna. Inside, they found stacks of dead migrants piled on top of each other. The police announced on Friday that the cargo contained a total of 71 bodies, including a baby girl. The police added that the victims had likely suffocated inside the truck. Authorities also mentioned that one of the victims had a Syrian travel document, but it's too early to tell which countries the entire group of migrants came from. Hungarian police have now arrested 3 people linked to the incident, including the truck driver who turned out to be a Romanian national. Officials said they hoped this trace would lead them to other smugglers involved. Meanwhile, another migrant crisis took place off the Libyan coast on Thursday when 2 boats carrying about 500 migrants capsized in the Mediterranean Sea. Libyan authorities said they have rescued more than 250 survivors so far, but the rest are still missing. According to the United Nations, the number of desperate migrants trying to reach Europe across the Mediterranean has surged to more than 300,000 this year, nearly 40% more compared to last year. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
And turning to other news, the Vatican said Friday that a former Catholic archbishop accused of sexually abusing a child has died ahead of his trial. Joseph Wysocki, who served as a former ambassador to the Dominican Republic, appears to have died of natural causes. The 67-year-old was found dead in his room in the Papal State, where he was placed under house arrest last September. An autopsy will be performed to determine the exact cause of death. He was charged with paying boys for sex, purchasing pedophile materials, and offending the Christian morale. If convicted, he could have served up to 35 years in jail. Wysocki was taken to a hospital in July after falling sick one day before his trial. Now, his trial had to be postponed because of his health. It was the first time the Vatican has taken measures of this magnitude against a high-ranking Catholic official. Pope Francis has been aiming to clean up the Catholic Church, cracking down on child sex abuse scandals that have been ongoing for many years. And lastly, Mark Zuckerberg announced that Facebook hit an unprecedented benchmark of 1 billion users in a single day on Monday. The co-founder and CEO of the social media platform made the announcement on his personal page on Thursday. He said that this now meant that about 1 in 7 people on the planet used Facebook to connect with their family and friends. Zuckerberg predicted that Facebook's reach would continue to grow and that it was just the beginning of connecting the whole world. In July, the social media site claimed that over half of the world's online users came to visit at least once a month. Facebook has been growing steadily, and in the second quarter of 2015, it averaged 968 million active users per day and 1.49 billion monthly. Now, based on these figures, the networking site may also reach a total of 1 billion mobile users logging in using smartphones and tablets in a single day. And that does it for your international news for now. Have a good night.
With September just around the corner, we're getting into the early stage of the fall season. Cool and breezy morning and warm afternoons are forecast to continue through the weekend. And Saturday will kick off with sunny skies, but a few clouds will be rolling in as the day moves along. And the forecast also calls for fog in the morning, which could reduce visibility to as low as 50 meters in certain areas between tonight and dawn. So please drive with extra caution. And just like this afternoon, chances of sudden showers cannot be ruled out, so if you plan to be outside, remember to have an umbrella with you. On that note, let's take a closer look at the readings for tomorrow. Daily high here is Seoul and Busan will climb up to 29, while Daegu and Gwangju rise to 30 tomorrow afternoon. And as for the other parts, Daejeon and Jeju Island will see a high of 30 and 27, while Tokto rises to 26. Now, the first week of September is shaping up to have stable conditions, with temperature readings forecast to remain in the upper 20s under mostly to partly sunny skies here in the capital. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
And we've come to the end of another newscast for this week. Thank you for staying with us.
We'll be back same time next week. Goodbye for now.